And according to the screen, we are live after hours, and both Mr. George and myself are going to be on camera tonight. Mr. George, of course, is going to be on camera because of continuity. He's dedicated to that sort of thing, and I can't seem to get my camera to run. I had a bit of a
Off camera, you mean?
oh, my apologies. I meant Avatar, on Avatar. That's what
On
I'm trying to say.
Avatar.
On Avatar, and had some computer issues, and so the camera is not working. So we are on Avatar. It's great to see everybody, and there's a lot going on. The Seaver, the great Seaver, is telling me to turn on entropy, and I will. And there's Annika. Hello to you, dear lady. The great Roy Danton, Mr. Booga. Wonderful to see you. Already applauding, and that's what we like to see. Traversing the Divide, a big hello to you. Had a great day today, ladies and gentlemen. I was on earlier today. I don't know if this was a regular length of the show with Nordic Frontier or if it just went extraordinarily long because I kept talking about all of the great things that you all are doing and that we are doing here in service to White Wellbeing. But it was a fantastic time I had over there with Andreas, Johan, and Mike, stand-up folks. And of course, they're part of the broader movement, over there, the Nordic Front. And big hello to all of them. That is up. I tweeted that earlier today. I actually put it up on all of my different platforms, the link, and you all can find it there if you'd like to follow those links back to their site, and you can listen to that discussion. Really a professional job they do over there, and very exciting stuff. Talked a lot about going free and how you go free, how this helps people, introducing this to their communities over there. And of course, I'm going to be over in Scandinavia, Europe this year. So hopefully I'll be able to meet these people and some others and spread going free to our brothers and sisters in that part of the world. That will be magnificent. Very excited about that. And we could talk about that. We can talk about any number of things that you all would like to discuss tonight. I know a lot of people are still looking at the coronavirus and wondering how the heck can they get that when they drink Budweiser. And so we could possibly talk about that. And
I have wondered what the folks at Corona Beer are thinking of all this.
I know their ad company they're wondering what are we going to do so this doesn't end up.
They must be very nervous. They must be very nervous right now.
Yes, exactly. Maybe they'll come up with the Times have gotten so sick. I could see them coming up with a commercial where somebody comes in with the coronavirus and then they give them a Corona beer and then they recover from the coronavirus.
It might be the kind of false advertising or giving medical advice.
Maybe so.
Might not make it past the FCC.
They'd have to write that across the bottom and top of the screen, maybe. And there's also, of course, the Supreme Court ruling that a lot of people are talking about. And of course, as is usually the case, you have our folks trying to see something wonderful in there that just simply isn't there. And so sorry to say, we're not going to have wonderful things happening until we recapture our destiny, ladies and gentlemen. Don't look to politicians. Please don't fall for this because you're going to end up having a broken heart. And there's nothing that is more pitiful in the world than a grown man crying. So let's not fall for these sorts of things and instead keep our eye on the ball. Let me go ahead and
I'd like to hear your take on that because I only was able to watch the Vincent James video on it before going live, and he had an optimistic take on it. So I would like to ask you and learn a bit more about it live tonight, get some of your nuanced thoughts on it, because I figured there must be another side to it.
Well, yeah, and I'd like to hear what Vince had to say since you watched him. I mean, we could start off with that, actually, because I think a lot of people are talking about this. I saw a lot of tweets and people reaching out to me, isn't this a wonderful thing? And then sending me clips from other content producers. Unfortunately, Vincent was not one of them, where they were saying, this is great. It's a great white pill. What kind of white, enema? I mean, what are they talking about? This is a great white pill. Maybe if you like to receive your medicine rectally, it's a great white pill, but not me personally. I would rather have things that are actually positive. But let me know what Vincent had to say. Let me real quickly, I'll say entropy is up. So thank you very much for that, Seaver. And thank you for being here tonight and doing the Lord's work in the chat. And thank you to everyone who has become a channel member. If you are having any issues with that, let's talk to each other and let's figure this out. Why is, for some, the join button not showing up? It should be right underneath the banner on the channel. And if that is not showing up, what else do you see? I've heard some rumors that some people see different things, and everybody seems to be on different devices when they're getting this. So let's try to make sense of it by talking to each other. If you're having an issue, reach out. You can do so in the live chat or on the thread after the fact in replay, and see if we can't figure it out. Maybe reach out to YouTube or the internet. But there should be a join button if you desire to join. And we also have Seaver, who is putting together some makeshift instructions to be able, for you all to be able to become a member without giving the Google monster your private information, so that you can remain anonymous. There are some methods out there, and we're going to chisel them down until we find the ones that work for the most, and we will be providing those for you. So if you're interested and you're in the chat tonight, we're going to be here for just about an hour. Make sure you mention that you would like to become a member and you'd like to find out how to do so anonymously, and we'll see if we can't get some information to you. Great to see American Refuge is here, became a channel member. Hello to you and thank you. Pierce Taylor Syntheside is here. A good day to you. Of course, the great hero Roy Danton is here. Jared, so what did Vince have to say about this Supreme Court ruling, which Gorsuch, I think, wrote the opinion? What was it, a 5-4?
Yeah, it was 5-4. Well, first of all, there's some there's some confusion among the chat. I know sometimes when we're typing away, we listen with half an ear. Vincent was not talking positively about the coronavirus. It was about, some people were confused about that. It's about the Supreme Court ruling in the United States against chain migration. Now, I don't want to speak for Vince. I was listening casually, so I cannot speak for Vincent James. I don't have his bullet points in front of me. But essentially, his video was going through it and saying that we spend billions and billions of dollars a year, not only in what we think of as aid, like welfare kind of benefits to illegals and all of that, but also even education, them being in our education system, none of which really makes sense if you think about it, right? Unless you know that there's an anti-what agenda going on. But putting that aside for a minute, he was essentially saying that this ruling is going to end any migrant, or it's going to curtail people from migrating who could become wards of the state. So there's a very narrow window, actually, in terms of being able to prove that you have a job and you have proper health insurance, so that the state isn't going to pay for your health insurance if you go into the emergency room, if an anvil falls in your foot, Looney Tunes style or something like that. And it's not like the state is going to foot the bill. 30 days is a pretty short amount of time to prove that. Obviously, sometimes people, even us actual legal people here, takes a little bit longer than 30 days to secure a job that has the proper benefits and things like that. But this whole thing about not being a ward of the state also would, in effect, as he was explaining it, end chain migration, where people can bring family members, since they're not yet citizens. If those family members came over, like they do now with the chain migration setup, they wouldn't have any skin in the game, so to speak. So they would be wards of the state. And this is apparently going to end that. I don't know the powers that, how that reaches and how this is going to be put into effect as per the Supreme Court ruling. But that's essentially what he said. He was very optimistic. He ended by saying something to the effect of, elections have consequences. We know that, we've all had criticisms of Trump. He's had his own criticisms of Trump, Vincent James, but this is a good thing. If we have the Democrats in, they're voting for abolishing ICE altogether. They're voting for pretty much bringing illegals in and giving them houses, and the exact opposite of this, so that while Trump might not be perfect, this is a win. We should celebrate wins. Elections have consequences. Also speaking about the Supreme Court appointees that Trump made so far during his presidency, which of course directly affected this ruling. So that, again, I cannot speak for Vincent James, but those are some of the bullet points I can remember off the top of my head. So what say you?
Well, it sounds like the average conservative take to me. I see here in an article the USA Today, Supreme Court allows Trump policy against immigrants receiving public aid to go into effect. And of course, when you read this sort of thing from the anti-whites, when you pull up their regime news sources, anything that undermines anti-whiteism in any way, shape, or form, troubles it, slows it down, is the least bit of headwind to it, is pebbles in the road, is something that they're going to act like it is the second coming of their favorite uncle. It's just ridiculous, and that's how it's this hyperbolic speech. And so let's see. Washington, the Supreme Court ruled Monday that the Trump administration can block thousands of immigrants from receiving public assistance. So thousands of immigrants. So they're going to be building that number more than it actually is, right? This is the anti-whites press. So thousands of immigrants from receiving public assistance while legal challenges continue under the Department of Homeland Security. So this would be the first place I would stop and question, what does this exactly mean while the legal challenges continue? So under one iteration or definition of this, what is this, the public charge rule, that it can be employed, but under a different definition during one of these legal challenges that are moving through the courts, it can be repealed. That's what it sounds like to me. Under the Department of Homeland Security rule, legal immigrants receiving or deemed likely to need non-cash benefits for more than a year. So likely to need non-cash benefits. Isn't that an interesting thing?
That might include the education that I was just speaking to. The fact that they can go through the public school system. Which again boggles the mind. It's like,
how do you get to go?
They know they're in the school, but
well, of course,
just going to let them be there. So I guess the illegal status doesn't really mean anything.
Yes, exactly. Oh, we have, let's see, looks like, who is this? Is that Tall Kevin has just become a member. Thank you very much, brother. Great to see you. Let's see. Nordic Nightmare saying there was no PWR. No, it's on tomorrow. It's on Wednesdays, brother, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So let's go back to this. So yeah, it says here, they'll be denied non-cash benefits, deemed likely to need non-cash benefits for more than a year. So there's another definition there, isn't there? So non-cash benefits, if they're deemed to need non-cash. So that means if they need cash, that's okay. If they need non-cash benefits, medical, schooling, and the like, for more than a year, look at the words here, look at the verbiage, such as food stamps, Medicaid, or housing vouchers, can be denied residency or green cards. Now, denied residency or green cards, there's another set of words there where the anti-whites will slither through like the serpents that they are. Does denied residence or green card mean that these people are hog-tied and taken to the border and punted across the border? Well, I hope they are not physically punted across the border. That could hurt the feet of those punting. But seriously, though, this is written in such a way as is typical of the anti-white regime and government, so that it looks like those silly white Americans, of course, the only real Americans, the ones that are not paper Americans, that they are somehow getting something that they want here. And in fact, I can see several holes when the anti-whites say, for example, well, we're going to deny citizenship to anyone who does not have a full-time job. And then the president, for example, were to say this and executive order, and then the Supreme Court says, yep, that's the case. The president can do this. No one can be a citizen who does not have a full-time job and is new to the country. Then what happens is all of those on the right, the conservatives, those with more holes in their head than a sieve, celebrate. And then they find out that the definition of full-time job has been furtively changed, and it means anything that the anti-whites want it to mean. So this is a very sophisticated game in politics and in love and warfare when you're out in the actual jungle of things taking place. So I'll just read that again. Legal immigrants legal immigrants. There's something I haven't read by the first time, didn't even catch. I haven't read the article before. So legal immigrants receiving or deemed likely to need non-cash benefits for more than a year, such as food stamps, Medicaid, or housing vouchers, can be denied residency or green cards, but nothing here says that they are removed from the country. Now, think about this. This can be denied if they're deemed that they will need these things for more than a year. What if they're deemed, the social worker, the person deeming it has the lateral movement to be able to say, well, they need it for 11 months. And so they're going to be allowed to have it. And then after the 11 months, they're allowed to reapply for another 11 months.
That's exactly what social workers would do. It's true. Who's assessing this? And that's the kind of people who will be.
Precisely. And then you have these non-cash benefits. So cash benefits are still permitted by this verbiage. Quote, to protect benefits for American citizens. Immigrants, legal immigrants, remember, what's happening with those illegal ones? Apparently, this doesn't apply to them. Immigrants must be financially self-sufficient, President Donald Trump said when the policy was introduced in August, which really is to say nothing except to baffle the minds of those who have to think about all the rest of the things they have to think about in their lives, like paying their bills and getting to and from work and dealing with the fender bender they had. And in amidst all of that confusion, they hear something like this and they say, oh, it's cause for celebration. And yet 5 years from now, because they've relied on Trump and they've relied on the Republicans to make things better for them, they then are baffled when things are more non-white and more at odds with their biospirits. But that's not going to happen for us in service to white well-being, because we're going to be out there doing the yeoman's work, knowing that no president, until one that's openly white positive, no president is going to do anything for us. The Supreme Court, that in a 5-4 ruling opposed by all 4 liberal justices, and while Chief Justice John Roberts was presiding over Trump's Senate impeachment trial, it does not affect Illinois, where a separate court order has blocked the policy. So the Supreme
that's another
Court
thing. The attempts at blocks on the state level or county level.
Right. So this isn't even the total of the country with all of the holes in this thing. Tell me again, ladies and gentlemen, why does anybody go and listen to why do these content producers have such large audiences and they are bass awkward in their assessments, in their conclusions? It is absolutely remarkable to me how superficial these assessments can be and misleading they can be, and how these conclusions cause people to then sit on their asses. Is it not wiser judgment to have someone tell you what needs to be done so that you can actually prevent your village from burning to the ground or the flood from drowning everybody? Or is it better to hear the siren song of everything's okay and then just sit and wait? I prefer to let's hear the awful truth, whatever it might be, because then we can address it and fix it. Associates Justice Gorsuch and Thomas wrote separately to make the case that federal district court judges should not be permitted to issue such nationwide injunctions anymore. Well, they're still allowed to. So if Trump was really the change agent that he claims to be, these judges would be arrested and under a state of emergency in the United States, they would be arrested and tried in military courts, because the judges and the anti-whites and these judgeships, etc., they control too much power. They have too much strength. They are willing to misinterpret the laws for their benefit. They're willing to legislate. In fact, they openly say, what's her name, who's on the Supreme Court? The Hispanic lady, she has openly said that you legislate from the bench. Legislate from the bench. And
it's exactly what it's not supposed to be.
Exactly what it is not supposed to do. So she goes to universities and has done this several times and given these speeches to the graduating class and said, well, you legislate from the bench Well, what a surprise that is. Something we see that they actually do all of the time, totally illegal. And it is definitely something that would take a state of emergency and a hero president, but perhaps like Andrew Jackson, somebody who is an actual man rather than a businessman, which is somewhere below lawyer in the depths and most inner rings of hell. An actual man, a patriot and hero like Andrew Jackson, to step forward and say that no, these people have to be arrested. This is purely illegal. It doesn't. You don't have to have recourse to attorneys to tell you that what is the plainly written language in these legal documents are indeed the case, and that the law has to be upheld. So he's not. He is a businessman, as I say, somewhere below lawyers in the circles of hell. The rise of nationwide injunctions may just be a sign of our impatient times, Gorsuch wrote, but good judicial decisions are usually tempered by older virtues. And it's this kind of conservative talk, ladies and gentlemen, that is so absolutely feckless and flaccid. I don't know. There is no amount of little blue pills that could turn this into something powerful. There just simply isn't. No amount of steroids or little blue pills or anything that could make this rigid. This is as pathetic and as crestfallen as any verbiage and any attempt to take back the law of the land could possibly be. One would hope it would be tempered. Well, how about you let us take the teddy bear out of your arms and you stand up like an adult and you go to a metaphorical war with the anti-whites that are burning down the country all around us. They're willing to rewrite the laws illegally. But no, you're not going to do that because you have the spine of a crippled jellyfish. Justice Department also looked beyond the scope of the higher court's verdict in the immigration case to urge an end to nationwide injunctions, that are, quote, inappropriate and must be curbed. Well, again, it's really inappropriate. Who's going to step up? The rule, which originally was to take effect last October, allows immigration officials to consider public aid in deciding whether to grant legal assistance along with other factors such as health, education, and household income. And so when that fine anti-white social worker pulls up in front of the desk and has that anti-white, non-white sitting in front of them who will reliably vote anti-white forever, he or she will be making the decision about whether or not this person is going to be a boon to your town, your community, your child's educations, and whether or not they'll visit your children at school, maybe sexualize them at school. That person is going to be deciding. Thank God Donald Trump has done this for us and Gorsuch has come through. Hosannas to all. In addition to considering whether an immigrant currently receives benefits, they also can decide if there's a likelihood the person will need assistance in the future. When has an anti-white ever said that a brown person showing up on the border is somehow a detriment? When have they ever said? In fact, in every single case, they are always.
Any of them don't need assistance?
No. Yeah, exactly. They are always considered a great benefit, and Lord knows that some of them are wonderful people, and they're going to produce, and they're going to be creative and law-abiding, absolutely the truth. But certainly the anti-white position that they are all absolutely wonderful. Even the guy that shows up with the tattoo face, that guy, he's going to be a great, productive participant in the democracy that is the so-called democracy that is the United States. What else is there really to see here? Immigrant rights groups denounce the court's decision and the Trump administration policy. And this is, of course, what you'll see. Remember, when you read their anti-white regime news, any single thing, don't ever, this is a big mistake for those in the white positive sphere, for those who are inside the anti-white narrative and are on this artificial spectrum that they've created of left and right, and they consider themselves to the right of maybe just slightly to the left. If they're on the right, they're maybe just slightly to the left of Beelzebub. And they see, well, those who are all the way on the left, they're really angry about this, so it must be good. No, that is not the case. This is simply not good. Don't ever look to these people. And if there's anybody that has any want to say I'm wrong, or they want to give their opinion or whatever, please do so in the chat and tag Jared and myself.
So what do you think is going on here? Do you think it's meat for the base in the election year?
Sure. I mean, Trump is giving people what he can, so that he can, just like a businessman, say, look at all the work that's been done. Yes, I know the job is months and months and years behind schedule, and literally we can say this when it comes to the wall, not even just figuratively. But look, we've already dug some trenches. So this, placate your rage over this not being done, because it's underway. Just, we need more money, we need more time, we need your votes. Let us have another run at it. He's got a lot more things that he has to do for Israel before, the next 4 years. So he needs to remain in office. And so it's going to be this kind of stuff. And certainly a quote unquote conservative justices are going to find as closely as they can in favor of the law as it is written, whereas the more anti-white judges, they are going to just outright legislate from the bench. And these people are going to go into paroxysms of rage if Trump says anything that could remotely, possibly, in some weird alternative universe, Rod Sterling overlooking the whole thing, troubles anti-whiteism whatsoever. They're going to go into paroxysms of rage. And if the judges here, they want to say, well, according to the letter of the law, this is actually legitimate for a president to do this, they're going to go into apoplexy over it. That is not a sign that it has really accomplished anything. He will, if somebody doesn't have any info to add yet, I speculate that he either has, or he very will soon free up more money, or find more money, or promise more money. And now we have the money for the walls that are all going to go up, and they're going to be big and beautiful. Remember all of that talk, the big and the beautiful walls that are going up. And then we ended up getting some more chain link and some more of these bars that run along the border.
Beautiful. That was an alternate name for the after party. Kind of like the Bold and the Beautiful soap opera.
Yes, that's right.
Or the Big and the Beautiful. That's not true. I made that up. But it sounded good. Some of you may remember, if you've been with us a long time, that over a year ago, in October of 2018, we briefly flirted with the idea of changing the name of the after party. But in not being able to find a name, it in fact confirmed that we will forever be on the main show, the after party. But I have a question, a bit of an on the spot question, and I don't know if you could let it rip fully on YouTube. But if you were on the Supreme Court writing this legislation, what kinds of things would it include? What would really show that it had the intention it claims to?
You mean on the Supreme Court and illegally legislating from the bench?
Or being president? Whatever. We'll fantasize, okay? But what kinds of things would be the hallmarks of an actual immigration program like this that would effectively halt the chain migration, the state wards, and not have all these holes in it like you've just elucidated?
A flat language that says all immigration halted, no exceptions. All immigration halt, no exception. And that would be something that they couldn't slither out of. You would have to have verbiage like that. And of course, you would, if you were to say something like this and not take action against these rogue justices that are out there, these anti-white justices and the like, then they would be able to stymie it until perdition, until we all go straight to hell and the country burns around us. So the only way that somebody like a Trump or could achieve these things is the country technically, and you have to ask YouTube to whether or not this is true, and you research for yourself, because everything I'm saying to you is not true. Just ask the people at YouTube; they will assure you of that. That the state, or the country as a state, could very well already be, I'll just say could, in a state of emergency, and it's functioning that way for some time. But you could under that state of emergency, take these steps against these rogue judges, or you could declare a new state of emergency and take steps against the rogue justices. And that would, of course, be to arrest these people, and they would then be tried in military tribunals for treason to the United States of America. It is The founding fathers made it very clear in everything that they wrote that this was intended to be easily understood by the average person, because they knew that there would be this trend by malefactors to say, oh no, it has to be interpreted by us. Only we are the ones that can take a look at these documents and tell you what they really mean. And the right of interpretation means the right to make a document say anything you want it to say. And so since the language is quite clear, this is quite clearly treasonous, the behavior of these people who pulling down the borders to the country. People outside of the United States do not have rights and claims to our rights. What use is having a social contract with the United States government as a citizen if those rights and privileges and et cetera apply to the totality of the world? And so, yeah, these things are clearly treasonous. But again, I could be completely wrong. Ask YouTube. I'm sure they'll have somebody who will be available.
Well, our own Piers Taylor has already informed us that he checked with YouTube, and YouTube said you were wrong, unfortunately.
Well, thank you, Piers. Thank you very much for that.
Piers, thanks for being on it so quickly.
Who would take the bet that the YouTube would not say that I'm wrong? So thank you, YouTube, for coming clear with exactly what we expected. We also have Question Everything here has a question. It says, I understand your position, but the left is openly anti-white. The best thing you can do is vote right and prepare white positive spaces. Well, now remember, you're very nearly in alignment with what I say. The first thing I would suggest is rapidly yank yourself out of the anti-white narrative and the artificial left-right paradigm. That thing doesn't exist. It's not real. Everybody that's serving White Wellbeing, we have the entire spectrum of opinions here about everything that somebody can have an opinion on, and we're setting those things aside until we recapture our destiny. So that is the most important thing. Now, you are wrong when you say, and I respectfully say that you are wrong when you say that the left is anti-white, but the right wing, in this artificial spectrum, is every bit as anti-white. They absolutely will not say or do one thing positive for white people. In fact, they talk all day long, if you've listened to Trump at all day long, about non-whites and women. All that they are doing, have done, are doing, will do for these groups of people. Never founding stock America. That's not important to them. I worked on the Hill with these people. I know that they are as anti-white as the other side of this artificial spectrum. It's just different groups of gangsters competing for their personal space at the trough, the public trough, and they'd like to stay there as long as possible. And they have different strategies and different voters that they have to dupe to various degrees and to grant to various degrees. It just so happens to be that if you are radically anti-white and vote for Democrats, that you're more likely to get what you want than if you are somebody who is voting for a Republican. That never happens unless you fool yourself, like in cases like this. I mean, remember the great Ronald Reagan. He was MLK Day, ladies and gentlemen. He was the first amnesty. He was the one that gave California to the other party. I mean, this is really, we have to take ourselves out of, I know it's difficult and we have to help each other, but we have to take ourselves out of this anti-white narrative that is completely artificial, and it is a story that ends in massive bloodshed for us. Now, having said that, when it comes to voting, and are you going to vote for a Democrat or are you going to vote for a Republican? You can go ahead and vote either way, whatever your conscience says. If you think you want more time or less time, we definitely could use time to build our numbers. So you're making a great point there, Question Everything, about preparing white positive spaces. And really what that means is building up our numbers, building up our liquidity, building up our connections, our intelligence, all of that. We need time for that. And so if you are of this mindset that we want more time, which we certainly could use, we need to remember, though, that when we do get Republicans in office in the United States, that it makes it a little bit harder to sell folks on going free than when we have Democrats. So you can vote Republican if you think that you want some more time, and then if it don't have your heart broken, if it's a Democrat, what matters for us is the reality where the rubber meets the road. Are we going to have a population that's going to be a little bit more amenable because the Democrats are voting away ICE? And so you're going to make it's going to be a lot easier to get people to go free? Or are you going to have a public who is going to think, well, Trump just and the Supreme Court, they just did this for us, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So really what matters for us is how we tread in the spread of going free. So it's an important thing to think about if you are in these states that are swing states for Trump, and you think there's a possibility that he could lose to somebody who would begin radically changing things, and you're not quite ready for that. We're not quite ready for that. Then by all means go out and vote for Trump, and it will at least slow the anti-white march. But that doesn't mean in any way, shape, or form, you need to keep in the forefront of your mind that voting for him is not doing anything. It as far as reclaiming our destiny, it merely is giving you more time to get your ass out on the street. Although it's going to make it a little bit more difficult to persuade folks, it's giving you a little bit more time to get out there and spread go free while the sun maybe still peeks through the clouds a little bit. It doesn't mean that you've accomplished anything. No party for a Trump reelection. Rather, it is okay if Trump wins. It's going to be a little bit harder to persuade. And so tomorrow I'm heading right out, and I'm going to have to work that much more vigorously to get folks to come over to going free. So I thank you for that question, though.
Jason,
any thoughts on that, Jared?
Well, I wanted to ask a follow-up question to my electing you to the Supreme Court, or maybe even president, which would be, what would you do with the illegals who are currently here? What would the language be around that, if you're able to speak to that?
A law addressing the illegals already in the country.
Yeah, because when talking about the new ones, you said moratorium on immigration, which I'm seeing more and more people make the case that if we've had X number of years since 1965, that's been the case, then we have to have the same number of years going forward where there's an absolute stop on immigration. And that's not the only ingredient. We still need other things going on, but it's a step. So you've already answered that in terms of how you would have worded this whole Supreme Court deal that we just discussed. But it also, the other side of that coin is the illegals remaining.
Well, certainly the verbiage would have to be just as black and white, where there's no equivocation whatsoever. There's no exception whatsoever found under any circumstance and immediately deported to country of origin or nearest country. The United States could force any country on planet Earth to take anybody the United States wanted them to take. And it wouldn't even have to be militarily. They could just say, well, the money, the faucet will be turned off to you if you try to object or resist us dropping people off on your wonderful beaches. It would be, well, if they're found hitchhiking, if they're found speeding, if they're found drunk driving, if they're found wherever they're found, immediate, no exception to the rule, deportation to the country of origin or the nearest country of the choice of the United States. And that would prevent the anti-whites from saying, well, in these certain exceptions, it can mean this, and in these certain exceptions, it can mean that, and also date ranges and all of these sorts of things and ages. And anytime they begin speaking about all of these little nuances, they get sewn in. What they're doing is they're setting the chessboard up and putting the pieces at the beginning of the game. So before you guys even start moving the pieces of the chess, they are saying, I am going to set the chessboard up a very specific way, and then we can start the game. There's no way you're going to win. So you have to be in the position to be ready to use very black and white language, and then be able to enforce that with military tribunals and the like, because of the state that the judiciary is, and of
right.
course,
The other part of this is military tribunals for any politicians or judges that try to go against this.
Well, precisely. And there would be, that's the kind of thing. And that's what I said, that if before Trump actually took his oath, I said, we'll know whether this is real or not, whether he's just been blowing smoke up America's backside, or if he actually is going to step in at the 11th hour and save the United States as it is believed to be. And of course, that had me wondering what he was going to do with things like the Fed Reserve, and how he had made a deal behind the scenes with the Fed Reserve, and therefore is he going to be allowed to do this? Or because remember, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't matter how wealthy you are. There's a restaurant in the United States, and it might be elsewhere, but at restaurants, there are different types of entertainment restaurants that have this sort of thing where you go in and you give them real money and they give you play money. They can give you tons of play. You can win the play money from the machines, and then you can turn the play money in for prizes, stuffed animals, and things like this. And it doesn't matter how much play money you make. You can win $1 billion play dollars, and the people who make the play money are still richer than you. And they can impoverish you in a moment if they want to by making more play money. So it doesn't matter if Trump has $1 billion or whatever number. He is still not inviolable when it comes to those who are able to print currencies. So he would have to be some sort of deal behind the scenes. So I said, if this guy is legit, then when he gets into office, it's going to be, and I was hoping for something spectacular, like the parachuting of the 82nd and 101st Airborne along the border with Mexico. That would have been marvelous, but it didn't have to be that way. It could have still come into office and taken radical steps. And when he didn't do any of that, I felt that it was 99% sure that it was all just casino lights, which he's known for. And it has ended up being that way indeed. Of course, if he wins again, we have another 4 years to see. Is he going to somehow go against his trend of the previous 4 years? Very unlikely. But it's yet to be.
We know some people are holding out for that. It'll be interesting to see. What do you think of the devil's advocate side of what you said a few moments ago about, you claimed it would be harder to convince some of our people that things are bad for us and we're living in this anti-white world if Trump were elected again, presumably because the average person on the street could say, well, America voted for Trump twice and he's all about these kinds of acts that we just saw the Supreme Court pass and building the wall and all of that. But what about the effect of just, again, putting yourself in the minds of the normie out there for a moment, the confidence boost, maybe that all of these things that they hold secret or quiet about, they would be that much more comfortable in beginning to speak about more openly. If they saw Trump was elected yet again, he has a second term, that there would be some kind of wave of people beginning to speak their minds more freely. I know it's already happened now, but that it would increase in number and degree. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that they would think that there is some sort of social approval of these positions. And
yeah, right, which a lot of people are beholden to.
Right. There, excuse me, undoubtedly, would be a percentage of that, people who will think that it's a little bit more socially acceptable. But think now about your workspace. How many people are allowed to really celebrate Trump and conservative or Republican ideas in their workspaces without fear of social condemnation, without fear of losing their job? In fact, you can't even go to Trump rallies and not have some measure of fear that someone there is going to beat the piss out of you for wearing a MAGA hat. We see these sorts of things happening around the country. So yes, there's going to be a little bit of this ease. Some people thinking that, well, if there are enough people who feel this way to elect Trump, then maybe it's okay to talk about some of these more ideas. And this is the kind of thing that we can use when we are trying to help those around us to go free. That we could actually say, well, look at all these people who voted for Trump. Clearly, they support going free. Clearly, they support Western kind and Western civilization. And indeed, white people, Americans, were voting for that when they voted for Trump. When Trump was saying Americans, white people were ignorantly thinking, and I say ignorant not out of stupidity, they just not know, that Trump was speaking to them. It's the same folks who think when Putin says Russians, that he's only talking about white people. You have no idea what these men are talking about. And in fact, if we look at we just a sober appraisal, since Trump has been saying Americans do this for America all along, and then we look at what does he celebrate, the successes, it's never white men, it's never white people, it's non-white people and women. And those are the groups that he, so if anything, we can conclude when he says Americans, he's meaning everybody but white males. Now, you might say, no, he's obviously including white males. Really? When has he included them? He's talked about everyone else. So maybe he's obviously including them. I don't know. But if somebody has some sort of telepathic power or something, they can read his mind and they know for sure that he is wanting to improve the lives of white males in the United States, well, then they should go on the road and make themselves rich and win lotteries. And because if we're going to go on what Trump is saying, he means everybody but white males. And the same sort of analysis can be applied to somebody like Putin. The greater issue here. So we should say, when we're trying to help those around us go free, we should say, hey, everybody voted for Trump and they're voting for Trump because they want to keep America Western. They don't want to be in an America where everywhere they go, they feel uncomfortable because different biospirits are manifesting all around them. These different cultures in their aggregate, they are manifesting all about them. They're uncomfortable. It's increasingly dangerous. There's increasing legislation against us, but more importantly, remember the interpretation of all of the laws and rules are interpreted by anti-whites, and they interpret those things to accord with and fit with anti-white ethics, anti-white morality. So they're either applied or not applied, dilated or what have you. And so therefore, you should get on board with going free. Now, the problem there, that is verbiage that should be used, and that's great. Thank you for bringing that up. The problem, if somebody like a Trump is in office, is that many folks are going to say, well, it's being taken care of. Vincent and others have told me that there was this great victory, and so I'm going to just go back to work, and my child won't stop crying, so I gotta go get the meds tomorrow too, and it's being taken care of. It's not being taken care of, and that is the hurdle that when you have somebody like a Trump in office, that you have to get people motivated when they think they don't have to be motivated, because they're going to say to themselves, what do I have the power to do? I can't do it. All I could do is get on a blog, or all I could do is pass out a leaflet. That is an enormous thing. But when they're thinking about that compared to what can a president do, and he's doing great things for us, they opt for nothing. And we don't have time for opting for nothing anymore. Now, the other side of the spectrum, of course, is where you would play down the public's decision to elect a Democrat, somebody who is more openly anti-white than a Republican. And you would then have the opportunity then to say, look, they just abolished ICE. This country is going to be overrun. You've got to do something, because the medicine that's going to quell the fever in that child of yours isn't going to matter one jot if your neighborhood is filled to the gills with anti-white non-whites from everywhere around the world, and bringing all of their doctorate degrees and science backgrounds and everything else that they bring with them. So you'll have to deal with all of these accountants on the lawn. What will you do when your lawn is covered with accountants and neurosurgeons?
It is tax time.
Yeah. Yes. So those are actually really pertinent questions. And let me check to see if we have. I know we have at least one super chat, and looks like we have Caper Mel as well over here on. I've got two over here on Ko-fi. Thank you both. Caper Mel is first.
Just as going on what you were saying too, we did have someone in the regular chat, and I apologize, I forget who. Said they were voting Democrat, and maybe I missed it. I did ask what the reasoning was. If they could elaborate, I'd like to see that. It seemed like a new person too, and if you are new, we love that. Welcome anyone who's newer over the last few weeks. Yeah, if you were that person who talked about voting Democrat and you're hearing it now, please do share your thoughts.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you for that as well. Caper Mel super chatting $6 on Ko-fi. and saying all that she had to say with those $6. Thank you, dear lady. NPC162 over here on Ko-fi, super chatting $15. Thank you, my dear friend. Great participant in the service to White Wellbeing, and here every day of the week, it seems. Jason, you can, let me see here. Okay, I will get back to you, brother. But thank you very much for those $15. And I will indeed get back to you when we are not on the air. Very mysterious, ladies and gentlemen. Very mysterious. Not as interesting as you might think, but nonetheless, better for an off-air conversation. And we had White Healing super chatting $10. I like this type of discussion for us, talking about the potential advantages and disadvantages of voting for either party in regards to white well-being. Well, thank you so much, White Healing, another great participant in service to white well-being, $10, and that's a great statement. Thank you for that. And we got to jump over to Entropy and see if anything's happening over there. We do not have any super chats, but we do have Tall Kevin over here in the questions widget. I just joined the channel membership. Will the badge still show up on the avatars if you watch through Entropy? Well, isn't that a good question? I don't know. We'll have to ask the folks at Entropy if it'll end up showing up if you're on Entropy or not.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
I'll make a note to ask them.
Okay. And if it doesn't, then perhaps it's something that they would be willing to work on to make sure that it shows up there as well. And Tall Kevin, thank you for joining and mentioning the badge. When it first comes in, the Eindelen, when it first appears, it is quite translucent. But the longer you are a member, the darker it will become, distinguishing you from those who are newer members. Tall Kevin also says, let's have a moment of silence for Basketball Man. I don't know about that. I said the other day that all condolences go out to his loved ones and to the loved ones of everyone who perished in the helicopter accident. I listened to the audio from the pilot, and I noted a few things I'll just briefly say about that. And that is that I think it's quite tragic, because I think maybe some whole families perished that were on this helicopter as well. I could be wrong, but I think that might be the case. But this helicopter took off at an airport, and the normal route from airport A to airport B, where they were traveling, is a pretty well straight route. And it's a sort of a curve, a slight arc. And there was heavy fog, especially through the area that what would have been a straighter flight. However, they didn't try to avert the fog. They flew sort of a circuitous route eastward before turning back westward. And when they did this, they flew eastward. And if this may or may not be true, I'll just say, just in case YouTube decides to say that it's not true. Of course, it is everywhere. NTSB and everyone has provided this information. But nonetheless, it could all be false, what I'm saying. Check with them. But nonetheless, it flies eastward. And I wondered when I saw this and the audio, I thought, is this a case where the wealthy person on the helicopter perhaps is saying, hey, let's take these people for a little bit of a tour. Let's get them a little bit of a scenic. Hey, let's get out of this fog, and we can be low because of the fog, this special waiver, if you will, and you can be lower than normal altitude-wise, and take this little circuitous route. They flew out eastward and then back westward, and then they hovered, and they were hovering for some time, I think a little over 15 minutes is what I read and saw from the NTSB. And the pilot there was radioing, and he was waiting because they had other traffic and they weren't allowing him to progress. And then when they finally allowed him to progress, the helicopter went at a high rate of speed. And the pilot asked for this assistance. There's some jargon. I don't recall what the exact jargon is, but you ask for this assistance where the towers watch you actively and they feed you constantly information to say, well, you're at this altitude and you're at this speed. And the reason why was he was flying by his instruments alone due to the heavy fog. and a fog that was so heavy that the police helicopters in the area would not fly. It was they require at least 2 miles of visibility, so they were not taking off. And this helicopter flew at this high rate of speed, and the tower, as it transfers as you fly along, if you are a pilot, you'll know this, whether it's helicopter or glider, airplane, of course, UFO, flying saucer, whatever you're piloting, you'll know that as you fly along, you go into the range of one tower, and then you get passed from them to another tower. And the same thing was happening for this pilot. And when they came to the next tower, the gentleman speaking over the tower, he radioed the pilot, and he said, "Look, you're too low. Your altitude is too low for us to monitor you. This constant monitoring the way you would like. So please elevate. Please raise your altitude." And the helicopter is still just moving along, hauling. And the guy gets back on the radio again and says, "Again, we can't follow you. We can't, our radar really can't pick up your exact altitude because you're too low. Increase your altitude." No response, still chugging right along. And then the blip on the screen disappears. And of course, that was the tragic moment that this helicopter plowed into, literally, this hilltop. And fortunately, I guess we can say, for everyone on board and all of their family members, there would have been no knowing. There would have been no moment of terror. There would have been no moment of pain. It would all have just been gone in an instant. I hope that's the way I go too. I would rather not know all of the, if I have my druthers, I would like to just have it not a long drawn out thing, just an instant gone. So yeah, that's what happened with them, and our condolences go out to their families. Certainly, if there was whole families that disappeared in this accident, and I surmise that NTSB will be getting down to the actual nuts and bolts, literally, as well, no pun intended, about what happened in the accident. But they were speculating things like that it was just a failure flying in the fog, and not necessarily they were saying yet that there was a mechanical failure. But you know what I wonder in a case like this, the no responses, is whether or not there was a medical emergency, that the pilot was having some sort of medical emergency. It's a possibility, but it's definitely not a theory of mine. If you want to look for theories, you got to go for Jones or YouTube's authorities.
I don't have any theories myself, but I always have to wonder if there's an added layer whenever it's someone of a high level of celebrity, who they knew, what they might have known, information they had, anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's always suspect. And it's too bad that all of our people out there who follow this and yet don't know about what's going on to our people, that's the real news.
Well, precisely. That we have so many people who are heartbroken, and this speaks a lot to the white noir that people are suffering with. When you are so infected with MPs that you turn to the lives and live vicariously through sports heroes, people who play a game for a living, or actors or musicians, and your life consists of living vicariously through them. That is white noir in a deep way. It's a big marker of white noir. They're trying to escape who and what they are. And so these people who have been just rending their clothes and pulling their hair, gnashing their teeth, and tears wailing over the death of these people, I understand where they're coming from, that it's a big shock to see somebody who they know, they cheered for, they felt like they knew, and all of this sort of business. But then you do have to take the step back and say, how did you get to this point? Somebody who wouldn't have given a damn about you and all of these other folks on this, and that your life is impacted, your life is affected as though this was somebody who was actually close to you. And in fact, the really sickening thing, Jared, and it's a good thing you pointed it out, many of these people who are just horribly distraught over the death of a basketball player, they not only don't really give a darn about the other people on this aircraft, the other children, and I realized that it was one of his children was on the aircraft as well, unless I'm wrong. And again, a deep apologies and condolences for that. But there are
so
there were other children. Yes, okay. So there were other children on this helicopter. They don't really give a darn for them. And then to demonstrate even more so their sickness, they wouldn't exhibit this much grief if one of their own loved ones passed. That is just an absolutely spectacular, salient, blatant sign of white noir. These people have so invested themselves in the life of someone else who wouldn't care about them, didn't care about them, never knew who they were, and if given the opportunity, probably wouldn't have given a damn about who they were, that they would invest this much of themselves, that they would be in this sort of grief and would care less. We all know people who are like this. If a loved one were to pass, and that's a big sign of white noir. So something to think about. A great point, Jared. We have Matt D154 super chatting $9.99. Thank you very much for that, dear friend over here on YouTube, and writing, interesting discussion, guys. It may have to indeed be darkest before the dawn. I still could never in good conscience vote Democrat. Well, it's perfectly understandable. Perfectly understandable. You don't want to be the person who certainly throws the switch. Certainly, if we're not ready for the switch to be thrown. Now, when we'll be ready, I don't know. But I can completely understand. I would not, and I am not for this idea of let's make it worse sooner, because we can see that, and Jared, George, and I have talked about this with you all. Worse sooner if we do not have going free in place. Just means worse. Look at South Africa. Look at our brothers and sisters there. Look at these other places where it's gotten worse. And when you do not have a doctrine that protects us from the psychological warfare that is being brought on our people, if you do not have this, then you lose, even if it gets horrific to the point where you have these ritualistic slaughter, rapes, tortures. That still does not drive people together. It still is not driving them. Even they have nationalism. They have the nationalism of the founding of the country, of the different principal states, of the different heroes. They have their songs. They have the different hue and languages. All of this is not enough. These people are still, regrettably, now, of course, not all of them, but just like our white brothers and sisters everywhere, still suffering with meme pathogens, still believing anti-white ideas and precepts down deep in their bones. Back in the 90s, there were leaders from the white positive sphere who traveled to South Africa, 80s too, traveled to South Africa, and they all expected that worse was going to make these people just as white positive as a person could possibly be. And they all came back with their head in their hands, saying these folks are just as baffled and infected by anti-whiteism as we are in the United States or we are in the UK. And that's because we didn't have the psychological defense for the psychological warfare waged against us. So worse is not better until we're ready for it. Thank you very much for that. And I think there might be a Cash App. So let me jump on over to this screen. And we're going to be getting out of here in a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Not going to be a long night tonight. Maybe I will just read the title about the coronavirus. I know people are talking about that and wondering about the coronavirus or viruses.
Not the beer.
Not the beer.
If you do drink beer, drink something authentic. Drink a good German beer with those purity laws, or a good English ale. Something pure. Not this mass-produced crap with dyes and fillers and preservatives.
No, I thought I saw something about Cash App, but there's nothing.
There was a YouTube $5 that
got by.
I know after a short amount of time goes away from the public chat, but
let me make sure. I'll look over at the other screen, and we will see.
Edgar Allan Poe, I love your name.
That's wow! Look
at names.
Wow, Shaxor became a member. I got worked, became a member. Is this? Yeah. Well, this is. Did you all did American Refugee? Did you become a member today? Because it, unless this is not. Frank just became a member. Thank you. Most welcome. Thank you for being here. Okay, we have a. Yeah, let's make sure we have. Looks like Zedez super chatted a little earlier. 5 Canadian gold dollars. And I should learn how to do the accents from around the world. Then I could maybe make the show a little bit more lighthearted. What is this? Highly recommended. Thank you very much, Zedez. And thank you very much to Ryan, who just became a member. I saw over here on the other screen. Magnificent. Thank you very much. And a big wink back at you, Zedez. Highly recommended analyzing the impact of Washington's woke task force watch. And then there's a link here. Approves woke task force watch. All right, I don't know what that is. I'll have to check that out. Thank you very much for that. The woke task force watch. That sounds pretty anti-white to me. Like they're going to show up at my door any minute. Could you just imagine them out there right now? The little girls of both sexes showing up at my front door and banging on the door. Come out with your hands up. No white guilt. Well, I tell you what, if I have to go into their arms, I'll go into their arms with the coronavirus on me. Coronavirus live updates. The U.S. seeks to send expert team. Now, expert coming from the land of the equal really means nothing, does it? Expert team to China to combat coronavirus outbreak. Xi defends response. Beijing, well, of course, I'm guessing that means that they said no thank you. And I could see why they would say no thank you to all of the diversity hires and equality workers that would trot on over there, break out the Crayola crayons and get right to work on fixing this disease issue that they're having in a population that loves to consume things that cause me to have that little bit of throw up in the back of my mouth when I think about eating them. Beijing, a top U.S. health official, said Tuesday that he offered to send a team from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to China to help with the coronavirus outbreak. Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar did not describe the Chinese health minister's response, but said he hopes that Beijing will accept the offer. The World Health Organization said Tuesday that China had agreed to allow global health experts into the country. And of course, they're going to go in there with all kinds of spies as well, as though China wouldn't be aware of that. The Chinese leader Xi said, and bless you, said Tuesday that his country is being, quote, open and transparent, responsible. That translates well in its handling of the coronavirus outbreak as the number of cases continues to increase. Here's what we know. The death toll has risen to 132 in China. I would put several zeros after that if you want something that's probably closer to reality. But ask YouTube, they'll tell you whether that's true or not. Or Snopes, I know they have all of the answers. With more than, it says 5,974 confirmed cases of infection as of Wednesday morning local time. So these people are actually in the future, and they're telling us about the disease yet to come. A day-over-day increase of more than 1,000. Other countries in the region also are reporting more people infected, nearly all of them tourists from China. Well, isn't that nice? Open the border, have the tourists come in, eat here, dine here, stay in our hotel, stay in our bed and breakfast. Oh, you're from China. Have a seat, and let me just go ahead and get my hazmat suit. Germany reported 3 new cases late Tuesday and said they are all connected to the country's first patient, a 33-year-old man who was most likely infected by a Chinese business visitor from Shanghai, who he met at a company workshop. Pull up beside that replacement for you in company international and teach him how to do. Oh, you're sick? Hong Kong announced dramatic measures to stem the flow of mainland Chinese into the territory as though they have a voice, closing 2 railways, ferries. And that's not about any people, ladies and gentlemen. Those are boats. And cross-border tour buses. Flights to mainland China will be slashed by half, and because slashing them in half, that's going to make all the difference. It only takes one person to infect everybody, and individual visas to China will no longer be issued. Starting Thursday, United Airlines suspended some of its flights from the United States, but it will keep the remainder of suicide flights open to China after demand drops.
So I heard this. I heard something incorrect then. I heard the U.S. was stopping. Maybe it's just a travel advisory. Maybe it's an advisory. I thought it was stopping all travel into China.
Well, maybe.
But yeah, there's plenty of people talking about what you're indicating, the whole multinational open borders thing and how that jives with something like this. Sweden, apparently, I was reading on Twitter, didn't have any kind of qualms about people traveling to and from China, from Sweden to China and vice versa.
Well, Jared, you listen, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Yes.
We want to make sure that their feelings are intact, that they feel good about themselves, even though they have a deadly disease. So you should be able to be infected. Now, children play together. I love this mentality when it goes from the nursery room where children are supposed to be taught how to get along. And so they're not just selfish little urchins, ripping each other's throats out. And we're this mentality that's meant to speak and be on the same level as children. And then you put them in charge of the state. I love it. So, and then they head off to Iran and they say, "Where's my headscarf? What do I have to? What are those things called again? Those wooden horses? Where do I have to sit?" Whatever they want us to do. So what do we have here? Okay, we talked about now fairies you can find in the woods in Ireland. I think that's where you find them. They have little wings on them, and they're cute little things. You get pictures of them, and if you can make people believe that you can get photographs, you can make a lot of money. Machiavelli sucks, writing with $1.99, writes nothing but Zdes. So thank you for that endorsement and of Zdes and the support with the $1.99.
There were U.S. pilots were. Heard that I knew someone that knows someone who's a pilot for one of the airlines, and they had to stay in their hotels. The pilots couldn't leave. U.S. pilots couldn't leave. And
yes, well, they're closing. I read on Sunday they were closing the consulate. The consul had fled, and then the family, the Stockstills, the white guy who decided to marry a Chinese woman and had these lovely Asian children that bear no resemblance to him, biological white erasure, that they were trapped. And I hope that they get out of there safely with everyone intact. Certainly their cute little children make it out of there without getting infected by this coronavirus. They shouldn't be able to, if they're not 21 years of age, have access to alcohol. But Thailand has confirmed 6 more cases, bringing its total to 14 amid calls by many Asian populations to close the border to Chinese visitors. But would you believe that these people are so just, what a bunch of absolute intolerant
bigots.
Yes, infections have been confirmed in France, South Korea, Japan, Nepal, Cambodia.
You know who aren't bigots? Viruses.
Yes,
viruses aren't bigots. They're ahead of us. They're ahead of the game. They believe. Yeah. They believe in one world, open borders world. We're all citizens of the earth.
That's right.
But it's really that mentality is the virus, you see. That mentality is like a virus spreading all over.
Pardon me. So it looks like Sri Lanka, Canada, United States. Of course, I read on Sunday that there are 3 suspected cases here in Virginia. And the point I made that I would like everybody to share when they use coronavirus, and we should always be using things that are going on in the world that people are aware of course. We should always be using these things to help us, to help others go free. And the coronavirus is no exception to that. You should talk about the fact that these people have a different biospirit, and it's something that just doesn't jibe with us. Maybe eating bats that live in sewage is better than eating apple pie, and we just don't get it because of our biospirit is different. But what it does do is it creates these zoonotic diseases. We hear about them regularly. Zoonotic just means that it passes from animal to human. And for now, we have been looking with squinted eyes at the horizon at these distant places where these diseases have popped up, and we are worrying in the wrong place. Really, when it comes down to it, the first threat, yes, of course, is the borders, and we talked about that on Sunday as well, Jared, as you just mentioned. But really, the real danger is that we have invited these biospirited peoples into our environments. And in the future, if this continues, it's not going to be in some distant country that we see these horrible videos, and the video that I shared on Twitter where a poor person is suffering from coronavirus and having a seizure under a blanket, and then the seizure slowly subsiding, perhaps because the person was dying. It won't be the shelves bare in some distant land on the other side of the world. It won't be the hospitals inundated with corpses and people screaming and children crying. It will be your hometown, because these people have moved in, lovely people, and with different biospirits, and they're going to be looking for their meals, maybe down at the sewage plant or whatever they did, where they came from. We know that they make some of their cooking oils from, it starts with a sewage base in some of these Eastern countries, Asia. And they are bringing those traits and trends and palettes to our lands. And so if we continue down this sort of path, it won't be this Wotan or whatever name of the area was where this got started. It'll be Wuhan or whatever it is.
Wuhan, that's not the Norse god.
Right. Wuhan. It won't be this Wuhan. It will be Louisiana that it'll get started, or it'll be New York in the middle of summer when it gets started. And we don't want to see these things. So talk about this with your friends, family, and relatives when you're talking about Go Free, because it's a great opportunity to talk about the differences in biospirits between the different races of man. Not one better than the other, but for the sake of YouTube listening, we'll just say that all of the non-white biospirits are better than ours. The issue is that
some animals are more equal than others.
Right. So
some diseases contracted by animals are more equal than others.
Right.
That's if it was the bat soup thing. I mean, who knows what is really going on? There's all kinds of rabbit hole things, as there always are with this sort of deal. People bringing up patents on coronavirus antidotes from a few years ago, and who benefits from it and all that. I can't say I've been following it, and I don't think it's really going to do us much service to go rehearse all of those. It's out there if you want to check it out, but we do recommend using the vast majority of your time for something a little more tangible and proactive.
Yeah, precisely. If you want to have a little bit of a thrill, you head off to one of the other platforms where they're allowed to speculate wildly and entertainingly, and then triple that time in something productive for White Wellbeing. Mrs. Jess Horst, super chatting here on YouTube, $49.99.
Thank you, Mrs. Horst.
Thank you, my dear lady, for that kind contribution and service to White Wellbeing. And we are moving. We are doing wonderful things. You all know amazing things are happening. 2020 is starting off. Jared, I didn't get a chance to mention to you, I don't think, that when I was at my IRL the other day at the crack of dawn, these particular folks like to meet when the sun decides to peak above the horizon. Not exactly my favorite time of day, but when we were there, and we were talking about how this is going to be the roaring 20s. One of the good gentlemen there said, no, we are going to make the 20s roar. And I thought, wow, that is magnificent. That is. So I like that. Yes, I give all credit to that good gentleman. He knows who he is. He's a very bright guy in the white positive sphere behind the scenes. And we very much appreciate him. And we very much appreciate that input. Make the 20s roar. And he also said, we are going to roar in the 20s. I thought that was brilliant as well. And that indeed is going to be the case. So that's going to be the difference between the 20s from the past and the 20s that we are going to make them yet to be. It is we are going to roar in the 20s, and that's why they're going to roar. So, and people like Mrs. Just Horse are going to help that to happen. And it's already started off January. What a bang with the things that we are doing here.
We're not even out of January yet. Lots going on.
First month of this decade, and it's already fireworks. So thank you so much. Of course, metaphorical fireworks for law enforcement listening. Let me see what we have here. Maynard writing, could you let our folk know about the PFA issue with our water? They need to get granular charcoal or reverse osmosis filters. It's a big deal. Then that it's a bigger deal. I apologize. It's a bigger deal than that virus. Well, certainly because these people are drinking and the water, and the likelihood that they'll come across the coronavirus is slim. So at least now is the case. So yeah, absolutely. And Jared and I, we absolutely plan to do more of these health and well-being episodes, and that can be the kind of thing we can talk much more about on an episode like that. But thank you for mentioning it, so folks will hear it. And I have to get I filtered water, but I have to look into that and have somebody who knows everything that needs to be known advise me. But I also have here Tall Kevin writing somewhat of a white pill. The pro-life rally in Washington, D.C. had a large turnout. Well, that's magnificent. Thank you for sharing that with us. And that is certainly a lot of people who are who object. Not a lot of people who are going to show up to a pro-life rally are going to be ardent supporters of anti-whiteism. You will find some. I've met some pro-life anti-whites, but nonetheless, there are many more people there that'll be willing to heed the message that we share here in Going Free. Let me make sure we didn't miss anybody. And looks like I Got Worked is a new member. Thank you. And I mentioned Shaxor and Tall Kevin, our new members. I mentioned Frank and Ryan. Thank you so much for becoming members. And we are going to have those exciting emojis. I'm waiting for someone out there to also make some. I'm willing to look at any that are made, but I've also contacted an artist. And
Did we want to discuss your idea on air?
Of what? One of the emojis? Yeah, so sure, you can introduce. I think that's going to be one of the things. I have the artist that I'm going to be hiring to make that emoji. So I'm sure it gets made, and it gets made in a way that is as cute as all hell and will be fun for people to use. But yeah, Jared, if you want to go ahead and tell everybody.
Well, it's from our after hours a couple of weeks ago, how that spontaneously happened, one of our new mascots, but it was your idea, so maybe you should say it.
No, please.
The walrus. We want the walrus emoji. If you look at the after hours, if you go to theafterparty.tv and check out the after hours thumbnail from a couple of weeks ago, there's a handsome walrus waving and smiling, and we would love to have an emoji like that. Also, I'm just thinking of this now. If we're going to make the 20s roar, we may need some kind of a cool lion.
Oh,
the lion that they have, and someone actually just posted in the chat, is a little tame. He's a friendly little guy. He's cute, but maybe we need a different kind of lion that's roaring.
Well, I'm sure we could do that. Yes, that would be great. That would be a great. What we want to do with these I just want to make sure that we don't get heartbroken when they take it all away, but we want to have things that are going to be fun. And then when YouTube decides to take the toys away, it'll be just like, well, we knew they weren't going to, be forever. So nothing that has really deep meaning, things that are more fun, and we'll be able to share here. The members will, at least members will have access to these emojis. And I guess that's important. We should say that not everyone will have access to these emojis. It's not our decision. It's the way the membership program works. So yes, members will have access to these hilarious emojis we hope to, and we will make available. And it'll be fantastic. And I'll take a look at, I guess we could have several versions of the walrus. He is a handsome fellow, and so several versions of him perhaps. And I see some people. What is this? I see
like the whole set, everybody.
What's that, Jared?
Collect the whole set.
Yes, collect the whole set of emojis.
Many moods of Willie the Walrus. Sounds like his jazz album.
Many moods of Willie the Walrus. Yes, absolutely. Yes, ever since what is this? The seal? No, it's not a seal, right? Because it had the ears. What is it called then? The little baby one came up on the. I guess it's a sea lion. Sea lion, right? Both
debating, and people in the chat were telling us, well, sea lions are on this coast and seals are on this coast. I can't say I know. I still don't know the difference, but we were debating the finer points of sea lions and seals.
Well, ever since I saw that video, that wonderful video, and I need to post that on my Twitter. I meant to do that, of this little baby pup sea lion who just decided to crawl up on the family's fishing boat and have a little rest on the father's lap like a little dog. Ever since I saw that, I think about these guys from time to time, and I think, well, they must be. They must be friendly if they do that, right? They must. Oh, Frank has put up a couple of rabbits. Maybe we need to have an emoji of the rabbit I saved. Yes, maybe an emoji of him as well. The rabbit story that I saved from the Hoppy Monster
idea.
thing.
Is he missing a little piece of his ear?
Yes. Yes, yeah. You could see there was a scar right across his head. So you knew he was gone.
Who said that's somebody who really follows every stream. I'm impressed.
That is impressive. If that wasn't just accident, that was very impressive. Yeah, that's one of the stories. Yeah, so we could have these emojis that speak to inside jokes essentially with our entire community, and that's another great angle. That's magnificent. Let's see if we have any more super chats. And we'll see if you all have anything left to say or ask. And then we are going to sign off so I can get back to work and George can get back to work on White Wellbeing. I'm working right now on the standalone version of Prometheus Rising. I am very excited about this. We have a pronunciation guide for the different names of the locations and the different names of the people and acts and the like battles, etc. That's going to be in the back of this book, and a cover that's getting put together. It's verbiage for the back that is, I must say, I very much like the angle I decided to go with this. A little bit different, but I think it's going to work this way. And those I have shared it with so far have been excited about it once they read it. So I think it might, and I hope for White Wellbeing that it will really have legs, and we'll see a lot of folks coming over, especially a lot of younger folks that still have imagination left over, hasn't been beaten out of them yet by having to work for a living like the rest of us. They'll really read something like this and think, this is something I'm going to go investigate. So I don't see anybody on Ko-fi. Looks like we're blank there, so that's good. And I don't see anybody on the other Ko-fi or the Cash App. And it looks like we are clear on YouTube as well. So that's magnificent. Looks good. Let me look over here to Entropy. And we are blank on Entropy. And so, George, I will give you opportunity now to give your final thoughts, answer anybody's questions, or speak to anybody, what we're going to be doing next. Let them know, and then we'll check out.
Well, I guess we should mention we have the after party lined up for this week. We're going to be doing another Friday night special. So if you're across the pond in Great Britain and Ireland and on the continent in Europe, you might have to stay up very, very late or listen in replay. But we're going to try another Friday night. It was the time that worked out, and it does bring a different crowd here in the States. We do try to do them a lot of times where we can have an international audience because we do love that. But without any further ado, our guest will be Squatting Slav. It's been almost a year since he's been on. He was on, I believe it was March 1st, very early March last year in 2019. And we're going to be just talking about some current events. He also, last summer, he returned to his native Serbia, and we never got to speak to him about that. So we did speak to him about life in Serbia and Slavic Europe, of course, when he was on originally back last March. But now he has this recent trip, so some new info and some new perspectives to share. And he's always a great guy to talk to, really fun. It'll be a far-reaching conversation. So that's going to be 10:30 Eastern time, Eastern U.S. time on Friday night. And other than that, I think you all know the afterparty.tv is where you go for all of the catalogs. We're almost done getting all of our past media up. You can, of course, watch this show there. We also encourage you to check out our newsletter. My own site is thegreatorder.com. Everything I do is cataloged there. All the video stuff, of course, but some things I do that are not video, some other endeavors I have. So if you want to check those out, find out a little more, ways to contact me, it's all on thegreatorder.com. But I think that's it. We'll just keep the housekeeping pretty short and sweet tonight. And I'm looking at my calendar. Yes, that is the 31st for TAP. So Squatting Slav, 10:30 Eastern, January 31st, last day of January.
We're going to go out of January with a bang. The first month of this decade. How exciting. Having Slav on. I'm sure it's going to be a magnificent show. Thank you for all the hard work that you do, Mr. George, in putting these things together. We have Pierce Taylor here saying he likes Winston for the Walrus's name. I guess that would be an homage to 1984. Wasn't that the guy's name? Or is that, do I have that crossed with some other story?
You know, I read Brave New World twice, but not 1984. So I was trying to count Brave New World twice. I should read 1984, of course. But yeah, there's Winston somewhere. I do know that. And Winston is a good name for a walrus, too. The walrus, like a god, goes by many names. So we can fit in Winston and others as well.
He's polyonymous.
Yes. But not polyamorous.
Correct.
He's a traditional fellow. He has a walrus wife.
He's very loyal, and they have little walrus children running around. Seaver Hamlin asks, is there a number limit to how many emojis you can have as a channel? I don't know. It appeared that there were, when I was reading about your opportunities and options as having a channel that has membership, it looked like there was maybe about 20 that they were showcasing. So I don't know if you can have 20 at a time, or these are just options, but who knows? And of course, we can have emojis that if we reach a limit, then we could have a situation where we retire emojis for a time, and then or bring them back, and we could pull them down and make them available again. That would. Oh, there's HB says a vocabulary alert, polyonymous. HB's on it, ladies and gentlemen. When I use a word that is a little rarer and is going to be totally baffling to those who speak English as a second language, they're gonna think I'm saying polyamorous. But But the thing that he said the other day, as we sign out here, that had me roaring when I read it was, what was it again, Seaver? What was the word that I used? Logomachy. Instead of these being debates, it was just logomachy. He says, just don't say lucubration. He hates that word. But logomachy, I said, and he wrote in the thread, logomachy, that's it. I'm going to watch cartoons.
Logomachy. Now, does that have a negative connotation? Like it's just a bunch of blather? Or is it just another literally synonym for debate?
No, war of words. It's just people word combat. It's not really, there's no real debate. It's just people shouting. And Steven says Winston Smith. So I think that's it, right? 1984. So that would be a homage to that great story, which has warned us, and not enough people heeded the warning because of the perception that everything was okay. Edgar Allan Poe, great to see you, says Oswald Winston, the walrus, allows for a lot of what is this now? Something sounds in meter. It disappeared. I lost it. Where did you go? And then Seaver had something else he said as well. I don't know what it was. I apologize, guys.
The walrus allows for something.
I don't know.
I do agree with HB that lucubrating sounds wrong, even though it doesn't really sound like what it is, which is really just studying and thinking at night, right?
Yes. Well, that's why, I mean,
we're rarely lucubrating right now in a way.
Lucubrating right now, rarely used as a verb. More often it is we say that use it as lucubration, and that doesn't sound as bad, although maybe abrasion kind of sounds like it's in there. But
like a combination of a couple of words, and
yes,
it conjures a certain connotation. It has a certain feel to it, if you will, but it does mean something. It does mean something good that we engage in studying and discussing and writing and thinking, particularly at night.
Where's Tolkien? We got to dig him up and have him coin a new word for us for lucubrating. I'm sure he would come up with something beautiful. But all right, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a magnificent time to hang out with you all and the great Mr. George here on After Hours. I will be back tomorrow. I don't know how, but I will be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on PWR with Mark Collette. It's going to be a magnificent show. And then we will be back, as Jared said, with TAP, with Slav, and that's going to be fantastic. And we look forward to seeing you all then. Have a good night or good morning, depending where you are on planet Earth. Bye-bye.